Welcome to lecture 9 on module 5 of the subject ARM microcontroller and embedded systems. So the subject code is 17EC or 15EC62. So in the previous lecture we discussed about preemptive scheduling, okay, and that too priority based preemptive scheduling. So we discussed that using an example. Okay. So in this lecture we shall start with task communication. So as the name itself indicates, so task communication means two or more tasks or processes communicate with each other. So this is essential. Why? Because we're talking about a multitasking system wherein there are at a time more than one task or processes available in the memory, and we have seen that one process can have multiple tasks. Okay, and since the multiple tasks belong to the same process, in order to continue the execution, they may need to communicate with each other. Okay, so that is what. So that is why task communication is necessary, and we shall see how this is implemented. So in multitasking systems, multiple task processes run concurrently, which is nothing but pseudo parallelism. We have discussed this, and each process may or may not interact between. Yeah, so there may be a chance that a task or process interacts with each other, or there may not be a chance. Based on degree of interaction, the process tasks communicating on OS are classified into two types. First one is cooperating processes. So cooperating processes means in the cooperating interaction model, one process requires the inputs from other process to complete its execution. This is what is cooperating process. So let's say there are two processes. So in order to communicate, let's say there is process 1 and process 2. So in order to complete the execution of process 1, it requires some data from process 2 so that it can complete itself. Okay, getting what I'm saying? So you can map this to a real world example wherein let's say you want to go to a market, fine, but you don't have any vehicle. Okay, so then what you do is let's say your friend has a vehicle, so you call him and you tell him that you need the vehicle so that you can go to market and purchase something. So then that the friend you call, that is the second process. So he is the second process. He will come and he will share his vehicle with you so that you can use his vehicle and go to the market and complete your job. Okay, so this is what you mean by cooperating processes. So one process requires input from other process or processes to complete its execution. This input can be of any type. Next is competing processes. So here processes do not share anything, but they compete with each other for system resources such as file, display, device, etc. So there is no cooperation here. Okay. So let's say again one more example is, so in your house, let's say one vehicle is there and you and your brother or sister are there in the house. Okay, so let's say both of you want to use the vehicle simultaneously. So then what you do is, so whoever goes first and grabs the keys of the vehicle will get the chance to use the vehicle. So in this case, the vehicle is the process. Sorry, not the process. The vehicle is the resource. Okay, so whoever acquires the resource first can use the resource. So there is no synchronization here, or there is no cooperation here between you and your brother or your sister. So you fight with each other so that whoever gets the resource, which is the vehicle first, he can use the vehicle. Getting this? This is what is competing processes which compete for system resources. So always map to real world examples. So cooperating processes. So now we shall talk about this cooperating processes. So how they cooperate with each other, or how they pass the inputs to each other. So it can happen through sharing. So what is sharing? Exchange data through some shared resource. So this cooperation of processes can happen through resource sharing, which is share some data through the shared resources. So that, let's say the shared resource is a memory. So one process uh, writes something to the memory, and the other process uses that data from the memory to complete its operation. Getting what I'm saying? So that is some data sharing happens in cooperation, or this cooperation can also happen through communication. Okay, so whenever it is communication, no data is shared, but synchronization signals are shared. That's all. Okay. So no data is shared, synchronization signals are shared. So what do you mean by this? See, data sharing means, as I told, so some memory location is there. In that memory location, let's say process 1 writes something. So let's say it writes the data 10. So that memory location is utilized by, let's say, process 2, and it utilizes the value in that memory location, which is 10, and it uses that value 10 to do something. Let's say it will add 5 to that 10, and it will make it 15, and it will use it for something else. So that is what is data exchange. But in data communication, so no data is shared. Okay, no data is shared, but so only signals are shared. So what do you mean by signals? So let's say uh, one process is utilizing the monitor. Okay, let's say process 1 is utilizing the monitor to display something. So as soon as it completes its use of the display, so let's say process 2 is waiting to use the display. So process 2 has to come to know that process 1, which was utilizing the display, has completed its job of utilizing the display, and it has released the uh, display. So how it will come to know process 2? So process 1 will send a signal. Okay, it is not any data, but it will send just a signal to process 2 saying that, yeah, I have completed the use of display. It is free now. You can use it. Okay, so they are only signals, not any data. So that is what is cooperation through communication. So no data is shared. So this interprocess communication, which is also known as IPC, refers to mechanisms through which processes communicate with each other. So implementation of IPC is OS dependent. So some of the interprocess communications, okay, so interprocess communications adopted, which are generally used are, let's see, which are the generally used communications. So one is shared memory using global variables, pipes, and memory mapped objects. So discuss in detail about what is this. So as soon as you come across this global variables, you should visualize the C program wherein you declare some global variables in the main. Within the main, you declare some global variables, right? So what do you mean by global variables? So those variables can be used anywhere in the program. They are not limited to a function or a task. They can be utilized anywhere in the program. Okay. So the next way of IPC is message passing. Message queues. So these are various techniques in message passing: message queues, mailbox, mail slot, and then signals. So you can see, so this is shared memory, means some data is shared here. Okay, along with this, some data is shared. This is cooperating through data sharing. These are the methods, and this is cooperating through communication. Okay, so but here no data will be shared. Okay, only signals will be sent. So next is RPC. So we will see what are these in detail. So now we'll come to the first method, which is shared memory. So processes share some area of memory to communicate among them. So some area, so you can see this. So process 1 is there, process 2 is there, and this is the shared memory which is attached to both process 1 and process 2. So attached in the sense, some memory, let's say range, will be shared between process 1 and process 2. So let's say that range is from 0000 to 0010. So this is the range of memory in RAM, in the RAM, so which is shared between both process 1 and process 2. Okay, so that is what we mean by sharing the memory. Yes, so next, information to be communicated by the process is returned to the shared memory. So how communication happens? So whatever you want to share, so you the data, you write that data to this shared memory. So that is what. So process which requires this information can read the same from the shared memory. So let's say process 1 stores something in this memory region. So as I told, the region, memory region, I marked it as, so 4 zeros to 0010. So this is the memory range. So in this range, process 1 stores something. So next what will happen is, any process which requires this data can access this memory range. So let's say process 2 wants this data, so it will access the data. Okay, so it will access the data because it wants this data. So some of the real world examples, so what is this real world example is notice board. It is used by the college or the department to publish information for students. So in the notice board, so who can publish the information? Either the department or the college. So that notice board is visible to all the students. So the students can read the information displayed, but they cannot change the information. Okay, so only college has the right to modify the information in the notice. So it is a one-way channel. Okay, so this can also be two-way channel. How means? See, students can also publish in the notice board. In such a case, so it can happen that uh, whichever means it will be two-way. So that is process 2 will also publish in the same area, and process 1 can make use of that information. So then this will become two-way channel. So this is a simple example of notice board for shared memory concept. So in shared memory there are various methods again. So the first method in shared memory is pipes. So what is a pipe? Pipe is a section of shared memory used by processes for communication. Okay, so it is a section of shared memory. Pipes follow client server architecture. So what do you mean by client server? So one will publish the data, okay, and the other will use the data. So that is what client server, or you can say, so whenever the client wants something to this wants something from the server, it will request the server, and the server provides that information or data. So that is what is client server. So a process which creates the pipe is known as server, okay, and a process which connects to a pipe is known as client. Okay, so remember which is the server, whichever process which creates the pipe, that is this server. So a pipe can be considered as in, let's say a way to information flow and has two conceptual ends. So the pipe has two ends. So pipes can be unidirectional. So why he says two conceptual ends means, so at one end there will be server and another end there will be a client. So that is why he says it is two ends. It has two ends. Okay. It is similar to the normal pipes that you use in your day-to-day life. Okay. Pipes can be unidirectional. So what is unidirectional? Allowing information to flow in one direction. Okay, so in one direction means, so let's say the server sends some data, so the client accepts the data. That is one way communication. So our pipes can be bidirectional also. Okay, so wherein what will happen? So in this case, so the server sends the data to client, as well as the client can send the data back to the server also. So that is what is bidirectional. So an unidirectional pipe allows process connecting at one end of the pipe to write to the pipe, and the process connected to other end of the pipe to read the data. Okay, so that is why it is known as bidirectional. So at one end there is a process which will write the data, and at the other end there is a process which can only read the data, but that process cannot write the data back. Okay, so one will write the data and one will only read the data. So that is unidirectional. But in bidirectional, what will happen? So you can write and read at, one end. That means, so let's say there is process 1 at one end. So let's just mark it as P1, and this is the pipe. Okay, this is the pipe, and this is process 2. So if it is unidirectional, what will happen? So P1 writes the data. Writes the data means it will send the data, and P2 only reads the data. So this will write and this will read. So this is unidirectional. In bidirectional, what will happen? So once it reads the data, it can also write back the data. So it is read slash write. Okay, and this can also read. So that is what is bidirectional. So in each at each end, it is either read or write. Okay, so R slash W. So read or write. Okay, so this is the simple representation of a pipe. Okay, so implementation of pipe is OS dependent. Again, pipes is of two types. So first one is anonymous pipes. Anonymous means there is no name. Okay, so the unnamed pipes are known as anonymous. Right? So these are unnamed unidirectional, used for data transfer between processes. So anonymous pipes are always unidirectional. Remember, and there are named pipes. So named pipe is nothing but they can be unidirectional or bidirectional for data exchange. Okay, so anonymous pipes are always unidirectional. So that is at one end a process will send the data and another end the process can only read the data. So but named pipes can be bidirectional. Okay, so read and write at each end is allowed. So the process which creates the data is known as server, and process which connects to the pipe is known as client. So same concept, server and client. So with named pipes, any process can act as both server and client. That is because if it is a bidirectional, so a process can read the data as well as write the data. So whenever a process writes the data, it is server, and whenever the process reads the data, it is the client. So at any point, the process can act as server or client. So named pipes can be used for communicating between processes running on same machine or between different machines also. So this is the advantage of named pipes. So let's say there are two PCs that you are using. If you want to communicate between a process which is in PC1 with a process which is in PC2, so you can communicate using named pipes. Okay, so this is the general diagram for pipes. So it is one of the shared memory concepts. So next shared memory concept or type is memory mapped objects. So what is this? So this technique is adopted by some RTOS systems, real-time operating systems, allocating a shared block of memory which can be accessed by multiple processes simultaneously. So here, see, previously in pipes, pipes can be shared between only two processes. One is client and one more is server. So there cannot be multiple clients in pipes. But here in shared memory, that is memory mapped objects, so there can be multiple clients. That is here. It can be accessed by multiple processes simultaneously. Multiple processes simultaneously. A memory object or mapping object is created and physical storage is reserved for it and committed. So what do you mean by this is nothing much. Let's say this is the physical memory, that is the RAM. Okay, so out of this RAM, let's say this RAM is 1 GB. Out of 1 GB, let's say this part here, this is let's say 100 MB. So this 100 MB will be committed and reserved for a mapping object, so which is created. So this mapping object of 100 MB is used for communication among many processes. So any data you write here, it will be communicated with other processes. So that is what is the meaning of this. Okay. So a process can map the entire committed physical area or a block of it to its virtual address space. So now what will happen is, so let's say this is process 1, P1, okay, and there is one more process P2. So now what will happen is, so this 100 MB which is shared or it is let's say committed and reserved for a memory object. So out of this 100 MB, so let's say 10 MB so is mapped to P1. So remember each process will be given its own memory. Okay, hope you remember each process will be given its own memory. So out of this 100 MB, 10 MB will be mapped to P1. So that is, so out of this 100 MB, so whatever the data that will be written in this 10 MB of space that is mapped to P1, that can only be used by P1. P1 cannot use the remaining 90 MB or whatever the data that is available in the 90 MB. So suppose P1 wants to use the entire data available in this 100 MB, then it has to map all the 100 MB to its space. So then only it can use all the data in this 100 MB to it. It can use the data as well as it can write back some new data also to this 100 MB. Okay, that is what is the meaning of this. So there is a diagram for this. See, you can see here. So this is the physical memory or the RAM. So this is the, so you can see this is the memory mapped object, and these are the two processes. So 1 and 2. So what will happen? 1 and 2. So process 1 and 2, what will happen is, so process 1 has mapped the same area to its virtual space. So because process 1 will be given some memory, right? So onto that memory it has mapped this entire thing, and process 2 also has mapped something of this to its space. Okay, so there is an option that you can map the entire, let's say 100 MB to each of the processes, or if you don't want entire 100 MB, you can map, let's say 10 MB and 10 MB. So it depends on the process. So now in this 100 MB, let's say there is a variable a is equal to 10. Okay, so that is, let's say, mapped to process 1, as well as it is mapped to process 2 also. So a is equal to 10 is available with process 1 as well as process 2. So then what will happen? So this process which makes use of this a, let's say it will update this a from 10 to 20. So as soon as it will update the value here to 20, so the same value will be updated here also, because it is shared. So whatever the changes you do here will be immediately done here to this shared memory. So this is the concept like caching. Okay, so we have discussed this caching, write through, write back, and write around. Correct. So in write through, what will happen? So any changes you do to the cache memory, which will be immediately updated to the main memory also. So that is what will happen. So any change you do here will be immediately applied to this shared memory also. So now this process 2 can read this a is equal to 20, and let's say it will change it to 30. So then what will happen? So this 30 will be updated here. So any changes here again will be updated here. Okay, so this is the concept of memory mapped objects. So it is similar to caching. You can say caching. Okay, but the difference is cache memory is very small, but this can be large. So whatever the memory, shared memory, it can be large in terms of 100 MB, 200 MB, like that. So caches will be in terms of just 2 MB, 3 MB, or 5 MBs. So next, so this is about shared memory. So now we'll talk about message passing. So if you remember, cooperation can happen through shared memory. So that is what we will discuss now. So now cooperation can also happen through communication. So we shall discuss about cooperation through communication, which is IPC, inter-process communication. So the first uh, way of communication we shall see. So synchronous or asynchronous information exchange mechanism, that is what is IPC. So through shared memory, lot of data can be shared, whereas only limited amount of info can be passed through message passing. Okay. So whatever till now, whatever we discussed, shared memory. So shared memory, we discussed about the concept of memory mapped object, then pipes. So through this, large amount of data can be shared. As I told, this can be in terms of MBs, right? 100, 200, 500 MBs. But through IPC or message passing, only limited information can be passed. You cannot pass a message in terms of MBs. The messages can be in terms of KBs, kilobytes. So message passing is relatively fast and free from synchronization. Why message passing is fast compared to shared memory? Because the data here involved is less. So whenever the data involved is less, okay, so message passing happens fast. So that is what. So message passing, so the first technique of message passing is message queues. Okay, so again, as the name itself, so it is self-explanatory. There will be queue. There will be queue which will hold the messages. Okay. So process which wants to talk to another process post the messages to a first in first out queue called message queue. Okay. So there is a message queue to which the message which wants to pass the information or which wants to talk to other process will post its message. Okay. So it is just like a mailbox. Okay. Or let's say a box which will contain all the messages. So you can see, you might have seen the suggestion box, right? Suggestion box in let's say any government offices or in colleges. There is a uh, suggestion box wherein all the suggestions can be put in, and once the box is full, the person will whoever corresponds to that particular message box will come and collect the messages and he can read. So same concept here. So there will be a queue to which a process which wants to share the or which wants to communicate the message will write the message to it. Okay? So this message queue will store the message temporarily in its in its memory, and then it will pass the message to the desired process. So that means the message will contain the destination address, okay, to which process the message is intended. So the queue will check that. So whichever process uh, the the message is intended to, so it will pass the message to that process. So messages are sent and received through send and receive command. Okay, so there are commands known as send and receive commands. So if you want to send the message, you have to use send command. So what will the send command will have? Name of the process to which the message is to be sent, and then followed by the message. This is the syntax. Okay, and receive, so name of the process from which the message is to be received, and what is the message. So this is the syntax. So a thread which wants to communicate with another thread or message or sorry process posts the message to the system message queue. So the kernel picks up the message from the message queue one at a time. So from this queue, one at a time, one message will be picked up at a time. So similar to a queue. So if you are in a queue, so the person who is at the front of the queue will get his chance first. So one person after the other. So he will take the message and examines the message to find the destination. So that is to which process it has to forward the message, and then it posts the message to the message queue of the corresponding thread. See, it is just like posting an envelope, okay, to a post office. So the post office will act as a message queue. Okay, so whoever posts the message, so he will write the to address, right, and the from address. So he will drop the envelope to the post office. So the post office person picks up the envelope and he sees where it has to be delivered to which person, and he will go to that address and he will deliver to that. So similar concept. Okay, is the message. So message queue structure. MSG contains a handle of the process thread for which message is intended, the message parameters, and the time at which message is posted, etc. So all this information is contained in the message. So who has sent the message, to whom is the message. So message parameters means what is the you can say dimension of the message. So how much uh, memory the message consumes. Okay, when the message was created or posted. So all these things will be there. A thread can simply post a message to another thread and can continue its operation, or it may wait for a response from the thread to which the message is posted. So there are two types of message passing. One is, so let's say I want to pass a message to my friend, so I will post the message to my friend, writing his to address and whatever the message I want to communicate. And once I post the message to the queue, so or the post office, I will do my remaining task. So I will continue my task to execute whatever the rest of my task. I will do that. That is one way. So next way is, so once I post the message to the message whatever the message queue. or the post office, I will be blocked from doing any other work until I get a response back by my friend. Okay, saying, so I have received the message. Once my friend replies back to my message, whatever I have said, then only I will be unblocked so that I can continue my operation. So these are the two types of message passing. So they are known as synchronous and asynchronous. So in asynchronous, what will happen is the message posting thread just post the message to the queue, and it will not wait for the acceptance or the acknowledgement. So it will continue its operation. So that is what I told previously. But in synchronous, what will happen? That thread which sends the message enters the waiting state or the blocked state and waits the message result. Okay, so that is, it will wait for the acknowledgement. So whichever process receives that message, it has to reply back. So once it replies back only, the sending process will be unblocked. Okay, and it can continue its operation. Okay, so whichever process sends the data, sends the message, it will be blocked until you get the response. So this is the simple representation of message queue. So this is the queue. So one process posts the message, the other process can receive the message. So next way of message passing is mailbox. So what is this mailbox? So this is a special implementation of message queue. So it is one of the types of message queue. So it is a special implementation of message queue. It's usually used for one-way communication. Okay, so this is used for one-way communication. This previously we talked about message queue. So message queue can be used for two-way communication also. But this is one-way communication. Mailbox. So only a single message is exchanged through mailbox. Whereas message queue, multiple messages can be exchanged. So that is the difference between mailbox and message queues. In message queues, multiple messages can be exchanged, but in mailbox, single message is exchanged. So one process creates the mailbox, and other processes can subscribe to the mailbox. Okay, so whoever wants the messages from that process can subscribe to the mailbox. See, it is just like subscribing to a online magazine. Okay, so you go to the website of that magazine and you give your email ID and subscribe to that, let's say, magazine. So whenever that magazine releases, okay, so all those who have subscribed to that magazine will receive the new copy of the magazine or the link to the magazine saying that new copy has been released. So you can access that using this. This is the example. Okay, so whoever wants to receive the message, they themselves have to subscribe to the mailbox. Then only they can receive the message. Okay, so no one will force you to subscribe to the mailbox. Whoever is interested can subscribe to the mailbox. So thread which creates the mailbox is known as mailbox server, and the threads which subscribe are known as mailbox clients. So again, server and client model. Then mailbox server posts messages to mailbox and notifies the clients which are subscribed to the mailbox. So the clients read the message from the mailbox by receiving notification. That is what I told. So whoever subscribes to the magazine will receive a notification saying that new message has come or the new magazine has come, so you can go and read the magazine. So mailbox creation, a subscription, message read and write, they are achieved through OS API calls. Okay, so API calls means they are the calls using which OS kernels communicate. Okay, it is nothing but a simple syntax. So there is a syntax to communicate with the OS. So mailbox and message queues are same in functionality. The only difference, as I told, is number of messages supported by them. So both of them are used for passing data from one task to other. Okay, so but mailbox, only one message can be communicated, but in message queue, multiple messages can be exchanged. Mailbox is used for exchanging a single message between two tasks or between ISRs and a task. Mailbox associates a pointer pointing to mailbox and a wait list to hold task waiting for message to appear in the mailbox. This is the simple diagram. So you can see it is a one-way communication. So this is the server which has created the mailbox, and these are the mailbox clients. Okay. Next type of message passing is signaling. So what do you mean by signaling? So it is asynchronous notification method. So this is notification. Okay, no data passing takes place, only notification. So messages mainly used for execution synchronization. Okay, so what do you mean by execution synchronization? See example. So I'll give an example. Let's say two friends are communicating with each other. Right? So what is the communication is? So let's say friend one. So the person one is doing some job, and person two is waiting for the person one to complete his job. Okay. So then what is the way of communication between them is, the person two would have told person one that as soon as you finish your job, whatever you're doing, give me a missed call. That's okay. You have to give me a missed call. So then what will happen? The person one, once he finishes his job, whatever he is doing the job, he will give a missed call to person two. So person two will see that he has received a missed call, but that missed call will not communicate any message, but it is just a signal. So as soon as the person two sees the missed call, he comes to know that person one has completed his job. Okay, so then person two can do whatever the job he wants further. So this is what is signaling. Signals do not carry any data and they are not queued. So signals cannot be queued. A missed call cannot be queued, but a message can be queued. Fine. So it is a signal. So a missed call will not communicate anything, but it is just a signal that the job is complete. That's all. It will not contain any data. So again, implementation is OS dependent. Task process can create a set of signals and register for it. Task or ISR can signal a signal. Whenever a specified signal occurs, it is held at signal handler associated with the signal. So one more example is the traffic signals. Okay, so there are three signals, right? So red, then orange and green, right? So within means on that particular signal, it is not written that red means stop. Okay, so yellow means ready and green means go. So nothing is written there, right? Only lights are there. But the people who see the light, they understand that what is the meaning of that signal. So red means the meaning is you have to stop automatically. Okay, so that signals, they do not communicate anything. So as soon as it is red, it will not announce that stop. Okay, so there is no speaker there to announce that stop, right? So only signal is displayed. Only the red light turns on. As soon as red light turns on, people understand that you have to stop. So that is what you mean by signal. So next type of inter-process communication is remote procedure call. So remote procedure call. So the name itself signifies. So there is a procedure or a function, okay, which is present remotely. So remotely means, let's say there are two systems, two PCs. So in PC1 there is a function that you have to execute, and you have to access that PC through a network from another PC. So PC1 should be accessed by PC2 through a network. Let's say it is a wireless network or a wired network. Let's say LAN. Okay. So I'll write the diagram. So this is PC1 and this is PC2. So PC1 and PC2 are separate. So they are connected through a network. Okay. So this network can be wired or wireless. So now this PC1 has some function. So let's say this is function 1. This function 1 should be started or called. This function 1 should be called by PC2. So let's say there is a main program here in PC2 which wants to call function 1, which is not present in the same PC, but that function is present in another PC. Okay, so this is what is remote procedure call. So you are calling a function remotely from somewhere else. Okay, so the IPC mechanism used by a process to call a procedure of another process running on the same CPU or on a different CPU, which is interconnected in a network. So there is a network. So RPC is also known as remote invocation or remote method invocation. So RPC is mainly used for distributed applications like client server applications. So it is possible to communicate over heterogeneous network. What do you mean by heterogeneous network? So this PC2 can have, let's say, Windows 7 as the OS. This OS is Windows 7, but this PC1 can have, let's say, XP as the OS. So the OSs are different, but even though OSs are different, still the communication is possible. That is what is heterogeneous network. So CPU process containing procedure which needs to be invoked is known as server. Okay. So this, since I want to call function 1 from another PC, so this function 1 which is there in PC1, this PC1 is known as server because it contains the function that needs to be executed, and this is the client, so which calls the remote procedure. So this is the client. Okay. So CPU process which initiates the request is known as client. So this happens through a IDL, which is an interface. So this IDL can be a Microsoft interface definition language. So because since they are present in a different PC, so the PC1 and PC2 have to communicate using some set of rules or protocols. So these set of rules or protocols are known as interface definition languages. So how they communicate with each other. So this communication can be synchronous or asynchronous. So this we have seen in message passing, right? This is the example. So wherein you see these are separate pieces. So this is the procedure that needs to be called by this process. So this is there in one PC and this is there in another PC. This calling happens through a network which is wired or wireless. So this is RPC. RPC uses what are known as sockets for communication. So these sockets can implement two-way communication. So between the network and the application. So the sockets can be of different types like Unix sockets, INET, Internet sockets, okay, or they can be TCP/IP in, or UDP. Okay, so this is about task communication. So next, in the next lecture, we will talk about task synchronization. Thank you.